Well, good afternoon and welcome to the Oshkosh Redevelopment Authority meeting, March 16th. Please call the roll.
Birmingham. Hintz.
Aye.
Stam. Lasky. Ponick.
Here.
Belter.
Here.
Palmieri.
Here. We'll move on to the approval of the January 19, 2022 minutes.
I'll move approval. Second.
All in favor, or I'm sorry, please call the roll.
Hintz.
Aye.
Ponick.
Aye.
Belter.
Aye.
Palmieri.
Aye. All right, we are now at 22-01, approve offer to purchase 1125 North Main Street, TDS Metrocom LLC, $5,000.
I'll move approval of 22-01. Second.
Discussion.
Question. That's a really curious lot.
Yes.
Right there. And I noted that part of it was being severed and linked to the adjoining north property. Is that really a buildable lot that we've got, or is that just one of those odd pieces that we're going to have around?
Sure. And we can, Mr. Fitzgerald, he has been working with the client, but we can kind of talk about the city owns a lot up there and the RDA owns a lot. So you're right. The city lot is actually former railroad right away.
That's
So
what it looked
it,
like.
it is a little bit more challenging to develop on. But with what TDS is asking, for the land purchase, we are going to somewhat have them kind of square off a piece of the RDA property. And then that actually is going to be another discussion item tonight during closed session, as far as maybe making that area a little bit more of a buildable area.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
This is also one of the lots that we had put out for community groups to potentially use for community gardens. And it's my understanding that that has not attracted any of those. I do know in a conversation with the business on the corner of New York and Main Street, just wondering if they had been discussed, that had been discussed with them, because they were also potentially had an interest for, I believe they have some kind of growing, gardening, organic operation. So I don't know if that came about, but certainly this is kind of an interesting proposal.
Yeah, and this is something that TDS is looking to do quite a pretty large fiber expansion here in the city. So we've been working with them along with our Public Works Department on the locations of, some of their, these buildings and then kind of the different huts throughout the city to provide, improved service for the citizens. So we did not have a conversation with the property owner on the corner of North Main in New York. I was not aware. I guess just because this is further, to the south, if there is an interest, we could certainly work with them if they would like some property for a community garden.
So were there other locations that were offered to TDS or highlighted?
Yeah, there's a lot of locations they're looking at around the city. Some are privately owned, and this one just happens to be owned by the city and RDA. So we looked at a lot of other city and RDA owned properties. So just because of as Mr. Hintz had said, this site is a little bit more challenging to develop. We wanted to, make sure that we're preserving areas that are more developable. And then in some areas of the railroad right-of-way, there's actually quite a few utilities, existing city utilities, so we can't put it there either. So we did have some obstacles that we had to overcome to try to find a location.
So is the turquoise line on the left, is that the end result?
I believe the yellow is, and Sean, maybe do you want to touch base with, explain a little bit more about the project?
So, yeah, over to the left, you'll see
The
just
left
the
map,
map
yeah.
of the neighborhood, and that's the lot with the turquoise outline as it exists right now.
Okay.
On the right-hand side, the yellow area, and there's the turquoise lines, I guess, that run underneath the very edges of that, other than in that one corner. But that's the area that we're proposing to sell to TDS, that
Okay.
TDS has put the offer in for. So the area that remains to the white up there is what we are separating off in a certified survey map.
So
to
it really
retain
is
the city.
worthless. I mean, it's too narrow, too small, too,
It's
Put a garden.
it's irregular. There was a house on there previously that was demolition back in 2014, but it was there was an area for a garage in the back or even a driveway. It's only a 40-foot wide property, you can see, and we have some thoughts by separating that off that it can be combined. The property to the north is the one that Ms. Neidforth alluded to, that's owned by the city currently.
okay.
And in regard to the location as well, when TDS had approached us, they were looking specifically for something. They had it as kind of a geo-center right at the intersection of New York and North Main, and then looking out from there. But the closer they could get to that, and this happens to be pretty optimal in that regard. But they didn't necessarily have options to look on the other side of the river or way further north in town or towards Menominee Park, just given the nature of the technology that they're going to be using and how this facility is going to be a central hub for that technology.
Are they going vertical?
They're going vertical.
How high will they go?
Oh, it's
A tower? I mean,
no, it's there's a picture of the facility that's in the
okay,
packet.
sorry.
Oh,
It's in your
where is
packet.
that?
Yep, it's right in your packet.
It's-
I apologize, there's not page numbers. If you go
It's
to that,
about an-
next,
Okay.
keep going,
about an
next
8
pages,
tall
Mayor Palmieri.
Building. It's 82 square feet.
There you go,
Total
yeah.
This?
in area.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's not a building, it's
Okay.
just a
I mean, well, you can go, there's a door right here on the side, so they will be able to go in.
it's like
It's
that
mostly
Menominee
going to be
Park structure.
servers and electronic equipment housed in there, and
Same
then a lot
architect.
of fiber optic, thicker fiber optic coming out of the
Well-
facility under.
Weird movie. I don't know what-
Is there any dimension description?
On the page before, there is a conceptual site plan.
Oh, there it is.
So my question is they're gonna buy all the yellow, or they're gonna square that off?
They're going to purchase. They're offering to purchase all of the yellow portion of the lot.
And we're gonna do a CSM, so, we are gonna retain this part right here, just
Oh,
to the
got it.
north.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now I see
So
it.
they're just, this is technically the whole parcel right here, but they're just gonna have this, so we kind of squared it off.
You squared it up.
Yeah.
Okay.
What is the 22-foot gray box representing?
That's a way to get in, a driveway to get in, so somebody could park, their vehicle.
That's what I was
yeah.
afraid of. So I'll just share with you that given the deficit of green space in our central city census tracts and other opportunities at this price and this offer, I will not be supporting this as it has already been deemed that there is a shortage of green space, and then we're looking at paving this over, and that would then preclude any future groups from coming back on the community garden piece of this, or the ability to, I guess, have any kind of green space on that central city section of Main Street between New York and the river. So that's my position, yes.
So how viable is the space north of that for sale, for building on? And could that be the green space?
I'm just gonna quick go to GIS here. Pardon my,
Yeah, I can see.
so I'll kind of give you an idea of who owns what here. This is that property that the city owns. That's the old railroad right away. This is that RDA one, and they want to purchase this. This is privately owned right here. That's the one we're going to be talking about during our closed session. And this right here is privately owned.
In fact, that's owned by the business on the corner that
Okay,
Chair was referencing.
okay.
It's owned by who?
The business, well, the building owner of
The
that's on
computer corner. This is owned by Computer Corner, this lot right here.
You're sure
Right.
it doesn't belong to the residential owner here?
Let me look
I
here.
think they own that as well, if I'm not.
Let me just ID it here.
I believe Robert Wilcox at one time owned that
It's, he
property.
still owns it.
Okay,
And then this is owned by,
that's Sweet Tree Organic.
okay. Yep, so this lot right here is owned by Computer Corner, this one right here.
Okay, so that's not the same owner,
Correct.
right? Okay.
So from a city standpoint, it is somewhat of a challenging site. So this, use is something that, while it may not be ideal, it's something that, from a perspective of looking at, needs from the city, this was one, as far as with internet and telecommunications, this was one location that, they did like and they did want to pursue. So,
So I'm gonna go back to my question. So you squared that piece off.
yep, I can kind of, let me do this. I'll just kind of do, so it kind of, we could have a developable area of, right now, it'd be like this.
Right. Well, that little tail that hangs off doesn't seem like it's really much of anything that you could do there. I don't know
Well,
this-
I did mention we are going to be discussing this
That's
piece of
right.
prop.
Okay,
So roughly the area is, it's a small 0.15 acres. So it's,
Okay.
it's a small area. We've talked about doing different things like, maybe a welcome sign or landscaping, just kind of beautified, because, I would consider it somewhat of a corridor, New York in that area coming in from Harrison too. So those are some other ideas. And of course, this would have to go through site plan review. So they'd have to meet like landscaping guidelines and all of our zoning code requirements they'd have to adhere to.
but we did offer the space to community gardens and no one took us up on it?
That is correct.
Yeah, and that bid process was, some of the feedback that I got on the way that the RFP was put out was somewhat of a barrier for a number of groups who were interested. So I don't know that we did our best job there.
Yeah, some of the issues were like insurance. We wanted the different groups to have insurance just to protect the city. Some of them, wanted to do like site investigation, to look for contamination. But then that would also, make the city liable also. The size was a barrier for some folks, access to water, access for parking. So there were, we didn't really have an optimal site, unfortunately, too, that we could offer.
What's across the street from there?
That little strip mall where the Mong grocery store and the former vacuum cleaner store, which I believe is vacant, I'm not sure.
I'm not sure.
I think there's like 3 or 4 spaces.
Okay.
Yeah.
See the Schneebergers.
Chambers,
Oh, yeah, Chamber's, okay.
I'm assuming that this picture is from the street angle. This utility piece is what you would see from the street.
Well, let me go back to the site plan here. My
then-
guess would be somewhat similar, but like I said, this does have to go through the site plan review process. So if there was a way to potentially somewhat, put the landscaping in certain areas to, mitigate the look of it, we could also, discuss that too.
Mr. Hintz?
Question for Kelly. Since we have another property in the area that we're going to be talking about, are we looking at this in the right order? It seems to me that one decision has an effect on another decision there.
Are you thinking then to maybe table this? Or,
Yeah, well, or at least rearranging the order of discussion. It may be the kind of thing that would can make a quick decision on the day, my recommendation would be to put this at the, reopen the meeting and put it at the end.
Is
That's
TDS,
possible?
is it, oh, I'm sorry.
I mean, we could certainly, move the agenda around if you'd like.
Okay. I mean, does anybody else feel the way I feel about it?
Yes, I would support that.
I'm okay with that. But since we have a motion on the table and a second,
I think that a motion to move it to the end would take precedence over any kind of an action.
A motion to reorder the agenda?
To
Right.
amend,
Move
yeah.
that we reorder the agenda and put item 3 to follow item 7.
So we would need to adjourn
We'll go
open
into closed
session.
session,
Yep,
do our business,
yep.
reopen, we have to reopen anyway for adjournment, but that we would simply look at item 3 at that time.
And I'm sorry, did we have a second on that?
No.
no, but I'll second that.
Okay.
Any discussion on reordering the agenda? Moving item 3 to after item 7. All right, please call the roll.
Hints,
Aye.
Ponick,
Aye.
Belter,
Aye.
Palmieri.
Aye.
Okay. Motion passes.
All right, so then we will need a motion to go into closed session.
Or
Well,
did
no,
Item
we
4.
you do item 4?
we moved it to after item 7.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. I thought we reordered up. Okay, we'll move to item 4. The Redevelopment Authority Land Banking Strategy.
Yeah, this is just a little follow-up from our conversation that we had during our meeting in January. So we talked pretty broadly about all the different properties that the RDA owns, where they're located. And for this meeting, I'd really would like to discuss, maybe if RDA has, thoughts, suggestions, strong feelings about focusing on certain areas or another. I can tell you with the housing study, we talked about that at the last meeting too. Council will be considering that for adoption at the meeting next Tuesday on the 22nd. And the plan is after that meeting, we'll be having workshops with council to discuss, what recommendations they would like to start to implement. But at the same time, I do believe that RDA will have a role in implementing the housing study and being an important part of it, as far as looking at, places to, redevelop or, whatever way they, the council decides to go for implementing the study. So, just to kind of recap, the Marion Road Pearl area, redevelopment area, that area, truthfully is, almost at, completely redeveloped. We do have some property under the ATC lines along the river right next to Mercury Marine. Unfortunately, we can't really build anything because the lines go directly over it. And then on Jackson Street, the city has some properties there that in the past we had saved for future right-of-way for Jackson Street, if that would ever be reconstructed. And then on Oshkosh Ave, somewhat similar, we have property over there that we're saving for the Oshkosh Ave Sawyer Street reconstruction project. I can tell you that we're going to take a look at this, that intersection and that work. The plan was to save money that we are accumulating in our TIF district on TID 35 from all the redevelopment along Oshkosh Ave to try to help pay for it. But there are a lot of grants out there with the bipartisan infrastructure, bill out there. So I think that we want to definitely see if there might be any opportunities to help for funding for this, because we know it's a busy intersection that probably doesn't function as, properly as it should. And then, of course, here we have the South Shore, and I see we're missing 43 East 7th there, but of course, that we have that. And, we continue to work with the T-Wall group on the development of that, and it's going very well. But just to the west of Main Street, we also have other properties And we'll continue to look at promoting that. And of course, we sold that property on the corner of, or on the 6th Ave there. So, you know, we always are looking to sell the property for redevelopment that is consistent with the South Shore redevelopment plan and our comprehensive plan and the Sawdust District master plan. I'm going to focus a little bit on that block between 8th and 9th. We talked about this a little bit the last meeting. We have been kind of picking these properties up right now. We typically have been demoing the houses just with the condition that they've been in, with the exception of one on 9th Ave. I can't remember the address, but right now Avocap actually leases it out, and they have, you know, some of their, you know, clients in there. So one of the homes is being leased right now. But as you can see, you know, we essentially have half the block under control. And, you know, this I think might be an area where we might lean on, you know, some of the recommendations of the housing study, and if there might be anything, you know, that we would want to start to look at doing in this area. I think at one time the thought was to do something similar across the street, the Brian Burns townhomes over there. So, you know, we'll have to decide if that's the route we want to go, or does it make sense maybe to put other types of housing, you know, maybe smaller housing or duplexes or something else. So those are some conversations, you know, that we can have. Does anybody have any other questions before I keep going? And like I just wanted to show the South Shore Redevelopment District. This was created to kind of guide the redevelopment in this area. So from what I'm seeing, I think we're really going to be focusing on the South Shore area in the near future between the Sawdust District, hopefully soon the Morgan, former Geldwin site over there, you know, over off of Oregon. And then, of course, you know, just in the blocks between Oregon and South Main Street. And then, you know, and hopefully also the Pioneer Island, too. And just wanted to, you know, remind everybody we do have a master plan for the Sawdust District that we do also follow with their guidelines. So that's just something, like I said, we have opportunity sites also with part of Imagine Oshkosh are the plan. They took a look at certain sites to say, okay, you know, if you could redevelop this site, you know, it would have a positive impact in the community. And if you see, we actually are working on some of those sites right now. So we've really been doing a good job, and we've been discussing maybe perhaps taking a look at this again and just to see if, you know, there's any updates we can make.
Kelly, what is A on there? What building is that on Main Street?
Parkway, sorry, I'm just gonna get my bearings on.
Oh, I'm sorry, I should clarify. What is add value site? Is that a privately owned that we want to see?
You could maybe put a building on, I believe that's the former King Clift Loft.
The
lot.
one next to the Gibson
Yes,
Social
and the
Club.
Roxy.
Yes,
Yeah.
okay.
So instead of just a parking lot, could it be something else? Now, granted, we know that parking serves, you know, multiple businesses, but that was one that the consultant just decided to. So yeah, value added is we don't own it, but perhaps, you know, they could do something that would enhance it.
I've never seen this map before.
Okay, yeah, it's in the plan, and like I said, we've worked with the consultants to look at certain sites, and as you can see, there are sites that, you
Which
know,
plan? Which
the
plan?
Imagine Oshkosh plan.
Okay, all
Yeah.
right. I probably did see it and just.
It was a
been-
while
oh,
ago,
okay.
absolutely, absolutely.
So then, so these are, what, 10 years old?
2017, 2018, so
Okay.
at least 5,
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
And then the next one, of course, is Jefferson, and that will play into our conversation later, too. Right now, we actually have been having some success with talking with multiple developers. Sean just gave some developers a tour yesterday. So there are a lot of folks interested. This Jefferson Street, our properties are in a qualified census tract. It's in an opportunity zone. It's in a severely distressed new market tax credit area. So, you know, if you're applying for tax credits or other things, there's a lot of bonus points that you can check off the box, and also looking at other funding opportunities too for the capital stack. So we continue to work with adjacent property owners if they're interested in selling at all, and just to kind of keep a pulse on what's going on in that area. But
Isn't this one that for several months, there's been discussion about a possible proposal?
Not a proposal. We've just been meeting with a lot of different developers on it. Right now, most of the developers we're talking to would look at going for the WIDA tax credits, the 4% tax credits, and right now WIDA is actually redoing their scoring.
Yes.
So I think a lot of folks are kind of just waiting to see how that comes back. So
Sure.
we anticipate once we have that, that will kind of, help us determine, would it make sense, what would make sense in this area? How many units are needed? So a lot goes into that scoring sheet. So, but in the meantime, we're fielding a lot of calls and inquiries. And then of course, sometimes we talk about all of the different developable properties in the city. And, we of course always talking about this one. And I just wanted to show some pictures. This was actually from yesterday. Mary Palmieri, I think that you had some thoughts about, if it could be cleaned up. So our streets actually got out there. We lean on our streets to help us out a lot, but they kind of do it in between work. So you can see they removed a lot of the brush, and they can't take the poles out yet. We have to wait till that ground thaws, but hopefully after today, they can maybe work on that. So they did do some cleanup to try to make it look a little bit nicer out there.
Okay, so, let's see here. So they took out those trees.
Yeah, they just kind of, there was a lot of brush. It was more like just kind of weeds that, brush that kind of grew up probably further than it should. So they tried to leave, I think, more of the mature trees there on the property line.
And then they took down that old wooden fence, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, that looks really open now.
It looks very open, yeah. So there was a lot there before, so we were pretty happy and grateful that they could help us out. So with that, those were, some of the obviously, main things we wanted to talk about. And, when we do look at, the focus areas, we do try to work with our neighborhood associations to see if, there's anything that would benefit those areas. And then just to kind of, on the agenda, we also had talking about the green space, and Mayor Palmieri had mentioned this earlier. This is the city of Oshkosh's corp map. It's a comprehensive, help me here, comprehensive
Outdoor recreation plan.
Thank you. So we have to do this, and I actually talked with Parks Director Ray Maurer, and we probably will be updating this again in the near future. But those kind of circles, there's the blue circles, and then there's the purple circles. The blue circles are meant to be like neighborhood parks. So that's areas where they identified that we could perhaps use a neighborhood park. So it's not a huge park, but it's just a place where, the surrounding neighborhoods could go, with their families. And then the purple ones are community parks. So those are more of I don't want to call them a destination, but you might, you have more people coming. So those different circles around the city, that's where the consultant, identified where there may be a need for some additional green space or parks. And this has to do with population and, where they are located compared to other parks. So when they update this, that will certainly be a part of that conversation, as we'll be giving them information about where the more recent developments are. And, we know in the central city, especially in the Sawdust District, we'll have at least 300 units coming online. And so there's a lot of, I'm assuming this will change a bit in the future, but as you can see throughout the whole city, especially on the outskirts there is, a need for parks, and then a few in the central city.
Well, and please remember too that 1/3 of the population lives in this area,
Right.
where there is the least green and park space.
So that's something to, obviously as we talk about projects as RDA and community development all together, we always work with our parks director, and then as part of redevelopment, if there's an apartments or subdivisions going in, they do have to dedicate either parkland for that area or pay a park, like an impact fee almost. So we do continuously work with park, and then obviously the advisory parks committee board, they are, the kind of the gatekeepers of this, and really try to implement it moving forward.
Unfortunately, it has not addressed historically deficient areas. And one of the things that the Parks Advisory Board did decide this year is to put that future land acquisition for Central City Park on the CIP for 2025, which is quite a ways out. But it at least finally acknowledged that that is something that needs to be prioritized.
Sure. So this is just something, I know we had briefly discussed it at the January meeting, but, we wanted to show this map here today, just, if that's something else that RDA, wants to be considerate of. And certainly if there was RDA property that, we would look at potentially acquiring, or if there was opportunities where maybe it would make sense for housing, we keep in contact with our Parks Director to say, is this something it would be useful to you? And, we definitely discuss, all the options.
And I would just point out too that this map, it was brought up to Parks Director Mauer. I don't know if it was Rettler or I can't
I
recall.
think it was Rettler that
But
created.
there are many incorrect identified schools on these numbers. So it's not exactly an accurate map, unfortunately.
It's more or less like publicly owned, probably green space. I mean, because the city the city doesn't own all these properties. Some are school district, some are probably college, perhaps even. Is it just school district and city-owned properties on
So
there?
it's kind of hard to see right here, but for example, 46 is listed as, does that say Jefferson Elementary? And 46 is right here, so we know that's not accurate. Just letting you know that if you
Sure.
do happen to go out to that map, there are several corrections that never got made.
Sure. So with that, I guess, just looking for some input from RDA members, as we move forward, we talked a little bit about our funding sources during the last meeting. So, we do have funding that is available for us to make acquisitions, but, just kind of hearing some of the discussions and, reading the housing needs assessment and strategy plan. Does anybody have any comments, suggestions, ideas of, are there other areas that we should be focusing our redevelopment, acquisitions on, or, priorities, or should we kind of stay with, the areas that we're working on, such as Jefferson and between 8th and 9th? I think we're just looking for some feedback.
Do you have a map you can pull up of the qualified census tracts for 2022?
Yes.
It might help with the discussion about priority.
Okay. You have to give me 1 minute here.
Yeah, no. So last year we had 2 qualified census tracts in the city that were considered distressed or disadvantaged in terms of development. For 2022, that bumped up to 3. So I believe that's tied to poverty level, and there's several criteria. Social vulnerability index in there? I don't recall.
I'm not sure.
But the qualified census tracts, as Kelly said, they can be desirable, and then others, may not necessarily see it as the opportunity, that they are.
So that's 5. I know, let me go. I thought this one over here was 2. I'm trying to find a good website here. That's 2010. I'll try maybe this one. Download. I just don't know if it will come up.
I want to say it was perhaps census tract 14, south and a little bit west, or maybe it was 11. It's to the west of the Sawdust District on the south side of the river, kind of over in the area where Steiger Park is, I believe.
Here you go. Here are the 3 census tracts that we have right now.
Okay, so even further west.
Correct. Yeah, right, almost by 41 there. So as you see, this is Census Tract 5. We have quite a few properties in here. And then, this being, quite a bit of the university area in Census Tract 7. And then down here, this one kind of stumped us a little bit.
Right?
As
It was
far
a
as,
surprise.
I'm not sure, but yeah.
I want to say because of the density possibly of the, perhaps it's not income base, but lower income apartment buildings perhaps over in that area, it could have contributed to bumping that one in because of the density there.
Right. Yep, so these are the qualified census tracts. So when, developers who might be utilizing LIHTC tax credits, this is something that may help them score additional points. And then there might be other funding resources for them also. So I guess if we're zoning in on this, unfortunately, it doesn't have any of our South Shore properties in it, but it certainly does have
The shoulder.
yeah, it has, a lot of the north side and including our, part of the Main Street area and everything, so.
So Census Tract 5, in case you guys didn't know, there's 6,600 people in less than a square mile. Census Tract 7, the university, less dense, right? Because there's a lot more open space there, but you do have higher poverty numbers because of the student population. But like Kelly said, the other one that was added was kind of interesting.
So I guess kind of looking at this, are there any thoughts about like certain areas in here? And this is a discussion that I think will be ongoing as council looks at the housing study and really kind of gives us some direction with how, what parts they want to implement. I think, obviously we'll be bringing that back to RDA and sharing that insight and, letting RDA know, this is kind of the direction that council is looking to go and how can RDA, be a part of that effort too.
So to make it a qualified census tract, what are the qualifiers?
Oh, boy.
I mean,
Or you're gonna ask me that.
But
I'm assuming,
So it's defined any census tract in which at least 50% of households have an income less than 60% of the area median gross income, or which has a poverty rate of at least 25%. So, for example, like that 60% of, of the area median income, that's like what we consider, the low income, like if you wanted to get housing, tax credits or something, that's kind of that figure, and then the poverty rate too.
so density really isn't an issue?
No, it's really about the income.
Okay.
But of course, the denser the population, the higher that number, right?
Right.
how would that impact our acquisition targets? I mean, we have a limited budget. We can buy like 5 or 6 properties a year. We're spread out all over this map. If we should, I'd actually like a recommendation from staff
Okay.
to do a segmentation of either neighborhood associations or block areas that you choose within the census tracts, and then we prioritize that targeted area for any acquisition, and don't go out to a zone 5 because we got a good deal on something. I mean, I got a lot of stuff that I bought for sale that's in my basement that I never used. I mean, you don't just buy something because it's cheap. But
Right.
if we targeted, we only get $500,000 a year or $300,000 a year to buy things. So target where you want to have the most impact, and that's what we do.
And that's kind of where staff is coming from. We have some areas where we've been doing really well with acquisition. Obviously Jefferson Street is one of those places. We're, with the acquisition of, a property on Main Street. And like I said, I think we're getting close, if not already there, to be able to, that site could support a development and it could pencil out. It'd be feasible for a developer. And then the other area that, we've talked about is between 8th and 9th, over by Oregon too, where we have a majority of them. So do we get to the point where if we've already kind of gone halfway, do we keep going just to, to move forward? Or is it something where we should just start trying to, send out RFPs to see if a developer would want to come in and build smaller, affordable homes, workforce housing sort of thing too, so.
I guess that's my input.
Yeah.
We shouldn't buy anything that doesn't have a next strategy for how we're going to use it, sell it, or develop it.
Okay.
And that's what the redevelopment authority is here to.
Yeah, because I think you're right, Tom. In the past, it's kind of been opportunity-based, right?
Oh, yeah, of course.
And the scattered sites that weren't in redevelopment areas It's like, well, it seems like a good idea, but not an intention, right? And then I would also ask too, how many here are familiar with the red line maps?
Well, as it pertained to banking, I'm very familiar.
I kind of thought you might. There is an interesting mapping project that one of our plan commissioners, who is at the university, and I worked on together, that overlays the old red line maps with the lack of park space and some other dimensions in the city of Oshkosh. And it may be just an interesting informing of how some of that legacy continues today in the low income and more diverse census tracts. It's just interesting how that legacy continues.
So the map that you have up there right now is not the red line map, correct?
No, I just
we
have
just
up,
use
yeah.
red lines.
And if, I mean, if that's something that's, the RDA is interested in seeing, I can certainly work to obtain those materials for an upcoming meeting. I know, I keep going back to the housing study, so I know we're kind of we're kind of working along at the same, we're having these discussions when council really hasn't had a chance to discuss what they want to focus on. So if anything, maybe today kind of just puts the bug in your ear to start thinking about this. And, Mr. Belter will take your, some of your suggestions as far as, what's that end goal, what's the strategy, and see if there's, any areas that we can look at that maybe, would be areas of focus, if we have, something started already, to make it a little bit more developable too.
Well, the mayor and I have talked about targeting a block and I guess it'd be gentrifying it into a beautiful block of row housing or something that's really attractive and affordable, and maybe city subsidized that would really transform a neighborhood into something really cool.
And I just have to push a little bit on that. There has been some concern about gentrification in the central city.
Always.
And, obviously, I am pro affordable housing, especially for our workforce, and because so many of our wages are service sector wages, and so many of those folks who rely on public transportation are in that area and serving the tourism that, but we also acknowledge that we need a diversity of income range and housing as well. So just for what that's worth.
Absolutely. And part of the housing study, really, it looked at all those broad topics, and part of it was preserving what we have and trying to keep that character in some of those older homes. And I mean, I don't want to say historical, but I mean, it's somewhat like that, to preserve the homes that we have, while at the same time trying to attract some of the higher end homes and then offer, lower income, affordable options, which, like you said, is working with developers to put row homes or something. So, we find a place that all of our income levels, all of our, citizens can afford.
And then, of course, my pet project on acquisition is about that green space, which is kind of the second piece of this. But I think they go together. They're not necessarily separate and distinct, especially as it relates to some other maps that are out there, such as what they call the Neighborhood Atlas map, and some of the health outcomes and social vulnerability index. Okay, that's a little bit GIS geeky stuff, but essentially, again, looking at bringing that into focus and potential prioritization, working with the desire of some of the other city departments, to find that space.
Right.
It's a little more difficult than out by the edges of the city.
It's a lot easier to dedicate parkland, out in the outskirts of town. So, but that's definitely something that, we know green space, that was part of the plan here too. That is it's an important amenity and feature, and people like it, and we know we need it too. So, it'll definitely be something that we should, consider too.
Kelly, do you happen to know, are you seeing other redevelopment authorities? I believe this was in some of the preview of that housing study, where there's some overlap with some housing authority, and they're called CDAs, right? But are you also seeing where green space is being looked at as more of an infrastructure piece as well because of the stormwater and the other benefits or dual duty, triple duty that it can serve? Are we seeing more of that happen in the bipartisan infrastructure bill, or is that kind of a little ways off?
I think that's a little ways off, but I will say that, especially in the central city, sometimes you have to get creative with utilities. You mentioned stormwater, so a lot of times there's not a lot of space, so we have to figure out unique ways to accommodate for stormwater management for quality and quantity. So I think that's something that folks are, looking at other ways, and then at the same token with remediation, sometimes some green space is a great cap, and it might make sense to, have a little pocket park or something to serve as a cap in a hot spot where we don't want to build residential units because the thresholds would be higher. So that's something that we also, do look at too. But to follow up with the bipartisan infrastructure law.
Bill. Yep.
Okay.
Well, it has been
I call
passed.
it a bill,
Yeah, it
yeah.
has.
We, continue to look for grants and just to make sure that we're not missing any opportunities because right now there are a lot of funds out there. So if there's anything that the city can take advantage of, we certainly want to do that.
Thank you.
So with that, I think, like I said, I will continue to keep everybody involved with the process that council will be going through to as we talk about recommendations. My guess is probably in April, early May, we'll be having some workshops by then. So hopefully by the time our next meeting comes around, I might have a little bit more direction of, how council wants to proceed. And then that can hopefully, help us a little bit too, as far as how the RDA should react to that.
Or if folks have, some other thoughts before that
Absolutely.
to give some input and advisory information to council also.
Right. Excellent. Yeah, if I don't have, nobody else has any questions, I think, any comments, please feel free to reach out to me and, we can incorporate them into our next discussion.
All right. So executive director's report.
Right. Nothing terribly new in here, and I kind of, as we were talking about all these different sites, I did mention a few things. So nothing major to report. Like I said, we continue to work with T-Wall. Right now, they will be receiving their zone change and then their general development plan approval. Council will be considering that next Tuesday. So they will, at that point, then start kind of working more specifically on their phase one. And they will, we're at the same time, we're mapping out their remediation plan. There's a lot of things that we need to consider. And we're also looking at grants we can utilize to try to minimize the financial impact on both parties, the city and them. And then with that also, city staff is designing 9th Ave extension. So that will be, that work will be done this summer. So we will have that 9th Ave extension going in. And then hopefully in April, they will be starting the Riverwalk along the east-west segment of Pioneer Drive. So Pioneer Drive and the east-west segment along the river will be closed. And the Riverwalk will be going in, so that'll be really nice to have that.
Yay!
Yeah, we've been wanting that for a long time, and then the 9th Ave extension. So we're really excited about this year.
Do you have both those mapped out so I can see how Ninth is gonna go?
Give
Yeah,
me
it's
1 minute,
It's
yes.
kind
Is
of
this a curve?
changed.
Is it a
It's
little curve at
changed
the
a
end,
bit.
right?
So I'd
Yes,
like to
there's a
see it
curve
again,
because
too.
we are planning on using the same crossing that's there.
Right.
So we don't have to try to get permits with our friends at Canadian National here. So let's see, this site plan might be a little outdated, but it's gonna give you an idea of what it looks like. So as you can see, right now, I think it stops around right here. So it's just gonna loop up through RDA property and then use that same crossing. And then you can see the Riverwalk. These are the Riverwalk plans on here. So we have a few little fishing, areas for folks because we know this is a great place to fish. And then it kind of meanders, through the existing Pioneer Drive right now. And there's another little fishing platform. And then we'll cross over, and then there's an existing sidewalk right here that we'll connect to. And I'm currently working with a consultant on the next phase of the Pioneer Drive, the north-south for the design for Riverwalk.
And T-Wall
So-
is fine with how the road went and
Yes, yep. We've been working with them, and really, we don't have a lot of flexibility because,
Right.
or ignore these two, but there's a diamond-shaped parcel here that WPS owns. We've had discussions about purchasing it, but there's a lot of environmental liabilities that the city RDA rather not deal with right now. So we had to avoid that, and then obviously wanted to keep as much of the site, the developable site, able to be developed as possible too.
Kelly, can I just ask, so, we've already had issues, as far as the Riverwalk crossing major roads.
Mm-hmm.
So you pointed out that this is supposed to cross Ninth here and
Yeah.
then pick up.
Right.
Why are we not going around to avoid?
There's no crossing right here.
nothing there.
Okay.
So we have a sidewalk on the south end, but then we are having discussions about where the Riverwalk should go over here, and we are having discussions for it to come on this side.
Oh, okay.
So.
Just curious.
Yeah,
Yep.
I know.
Is there room?
It would be a boardwalk.
Yeah, you'd have-
But like I said, this is very preliminary, but Parks Director Mauer and I are meeting with our consultant, and, the Riverwalk is such a treasured amenity here in the city. Our previous staff, Darlene and Alan, they worked so hard on it, and it's such a great thing that we have that we want to do it right. And this area, I'm really excited to see the opportunities that are going to be coming. So having an actual boardwalk on the water, I think will just be a great asset for the community.
And then can you bounce over to the public land piece on Pioneer and how that would connect?
Okay, yeah, let me just go over to GIS. Hold on one second, please.
While you're doing that, are we having any issues with DNR?
Nope,
Okay.
nope. We,
There were some seawall questions, but I think that's what's being worked around, right?
yeah, so on the island itself, you're saying,
Right.
Sue?
Island has issues.
It does, but
Oh,
we,
no, I meant on the boardwalk issues.
it's pretty preliminary, but we definitely keep them in the loop, so, because we'll hopefully go after some grants to help fund that. So, the idea is, that we would be coming down Pioneer Drive, and at one time we talked about using the pedestrian bridge. It's in really bad shape, though. So some of our recent discussions have been actually bringing the trail down here and using the drive bridge to get across to the island. It'd be much more cost effective, and there is space. And then we'd have it go around the island. And if you notice, the point is actually owned by the state of Wisconsin Land Trust. So we are going to have something out here, maybe it's a benches or some sort of, something out there. And then it would come back, and then there's that other pedestrian bridge on the south side of the island. And then it would come down here along Pioneer Drive. There's some right-of-way and property there that we would be able to just kind of do more of our traditional 10-foot trail. And then the city actually owns this. They purchased it from the railroad a while back, so we had talked about that would be just a very kind of narrow little trailhead, but at least be where somebody could park. And then, of course, go on the south side of the breaker here. So we have a lot.
Is that currently publicly accessible?
There's
This-
accessible. You can
I've
go
ridden
on
my-
it.
I've ridden my bike, up my fat
Yeah.
tire out there to the
It's
end.
it's kind of like gravel,
It's rock-
dirt,
it's
rock.
rocky.
Yeah.
Rocky.
Okay.
It's not improved. There's no improvements. We haven't
Right.
touched it. But I mean, people love walking out, be closer to the water, and the one at Menominee Park is really popular. So,
Yep.
we're having discussions of how we can, work on that too. So it's exciting to talk
It
about
is.
the next.
This
the
is
next,
like super exciting, yes.
Talk about those next segments of the Riverwalk. So that's some of the, the big things that we've been working on from an RDA perspective. And like I said, I think I kind of mentioned everything else when we were panning around the city looking at projects. So that's all I have right now.
All right, so we will take a motion to go into
I'll make
closed
a motion
session.
to go into closed session to discuss acquisition of 122 West 9th to 0 North Main and 19 East Irving pursuant to section 19.851E of Wisconsin state statutes, where we might need competitive bargaining.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? Please call the roll.
Hints,
Aye.
Ponick,
Aye.
Belter,
Aye.
Palmieri.
Aye.
Okay.
All right, we'll need to.
This local government meeting is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly.
Please call the roll.
Hints,
Aye.
Ponick,
Aye.
Belter,
Aye.
Palmieri.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, so we need to now discuss.
What?
Okay, what we just voted on was, I'm sorry, we just called back in open session. That was taking the roll.
Yeah.
So we need to go back to the motion that was on the floor for the approval of the purchase.
Oh,
What we just
oh, sorry, that's what I thought we just did too, but we can certainly,
We just called the roll back in open session.
No, because you said all in favor of going into open session, we all said aye.
Sorry.
no, that's okay. We moved things around, so I think we're at adjournment right now.
So did you vote, were you thinking you were voting for something else?
I did not think we were voting yet.
Okay.
I thought we were.
We can,
I could call the question since I made the motion.
sure, if
I'll
you
call
could do
the
that.
question on item 2201.
All right, so no further discussion. Please call the roll on 2201.
Hints,
Aye.
Ponick,
Aye.
Belter,
Aye.
Palmieri.
No,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
And
Now a
now-
motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Adjourn.
Okay,
All right, please, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
May, it'll be a nice day.
Hopefully.